Small startup, 8 BDRs. Their BDRs, BDRs were like the only team in the org actually hitting targets. And really smart SDR manager, the way that he's doing it is they have a really good account qualification process. That's like the whole bottleneck to the entire thing is they only go after good accounts. Now, here's the problem: is BDRs are spending 2 hours a day. Now, dumb approach is I'm gonna replace the SDRs and send a million emails. And for me,
GTMAI podcast with Jonathan Moss and Coach K. Tune in now, don't delay. Catch the future on display.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It is I, Jonathan Carford, aka Coach K. This is the GTMAI podcast, and I am really excited for today's guest, my man Scott from B2B Catalyst. How are you, my man?
really good, dude. How are you?
I'm good. We recently connected, and I've just been geeking out over your content. In fact, I'm going to very much endorse you. If someone on this podcast is not following you, they absolutely should, because your stuff you're posting is awesome. I just wanted to get into it. Before we get into all the details of what you do, obviously the CEO, founder of B2B Catalyst, you prescribe yourself as a GTM architect, engineer, like this whole new world that's been erupting, which is awesome. I've had the privilege of kind of seeing you in action on the back end, so it's been a fascinating kind of journey to see that. But what I would love to know is more about you. Like, what's your non-LinkedIn journey of how the heck you got to be where you got to be and what you're passionate about and all that other good stuff? Then we'll jump into some details.
Oh man, that's actually a funny journey. So I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. So I went to the Naval Academy.
Nice.
And I ended up realizing, shit, that's really competitive. And the original plan is I was going to try to use missions work as a differentiator, but then I ended up ended up getting interested in missions work and did local missions work in different forum in Santa Barbara for a few years. And then I got really interested in the idea of poverty alleviation. And then the more I researched that, I was like, problem with poverty alleviation is that have you ever read about like relief versus development?
Yeah.
Giving people stuff doesn't really work. In fact, there are a lot of anecdotes about, hey, you give a bunch of food away for disaster relief and past an immediate point in crisis, you don't actually help. You actually destroy local economies. It's kind of wild. Like you're like, no, if you're in Haiti, no one wants to go to the Haitian doctors. The doctor from the US there. And so that I got really interested, and then I basically realized, wait a minute, this is business. Like all this is business. And so what I basically realized, okay, poverty alleviation is one of the biggest and most impactful things you can do for human beings, and for as far as improving their quality of life. And in my view, like actually bringing like in a weird way, like bringing the kingdom of God to people, like that would be the term I would use. And then I was like, it turns out like the only sustainable way to alleviate poverty is business. So I got really interested in the idea of business consulting, and then I got into the marketing agency space, and then marketing agency, vertical SaaS, helped some friends with the construction startup, got into consulting, got into B2B Legion, because like I helped a couple marketing agency founders like double without hiring anyone else, because I got the founders out of onboarding. They're small. And then I talked to a bunch of other people, and they're like, I love the idea of systems, man, but I need leads. Like I need new business. And then I got into leads. And then I realized, and then like a year and a half ago, I generated like 700 MQLs from email, like interest wise for someone. It was like 3 companies that I generated. Like one was like 180, one was like 90, and another was like 399. And none of that converted to revenue. And then in one case, there was a massive issue with the product offering itself, which I highlighted. Founder ignored me. That company's now out of business. So I was just like really frustrated, because I was like, okay, generating leads is not the same thing as generating revenue, or generating revenue is not the same thing as creating sustainable business growth. So I started trying to search for, I hate this. I cannot be, because the problem is if you go in as the cold email guy, people think of you as the cold email guy.
Right.
Like, how do I reposition so that you're more about revenue and you're here to help the business grow, not just, you're the clay guy, you're the email guy. And that's led to the current incarnation and our positioning today. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating too, because it's easy to get into that role, like being the clay dude. And instead, what I love about your positioning is that you're Clay is the tool of choice right now, but it's
Yeah.
more about the overall strategy of getting to a good view. And the Clay is just one of the tools in the puzzle to get you where you need to go.
The reality is less than 50% of the actual work is clay. If you do it, it's actually, the irony is if you do the wrong process, you have to spend more time on clay. But the right way to do it, so case in point, you have this interesting situation. Small startups, 8 BDRs, their BDRs were like the only team in the org actually hitting their Bitcoin targets. And really smart SDR manager, the way he's doing it is they have a really good account qualification process. That's like the whole bottleneck to the entire thing is they only go after good accounts. Now, here's the problem: his BDRs are spending 2 hours a day on that. Now, the dumb approach is I'm gonna replace the SDRs and send a million emails. And for me, I'm like, we probably don't understand quite as well exactly happening. But the first step is, okay, this is an obvious workflow. Interviewed 3 different reps, looked at the existing ICP material, and me and my team, it's okay, we can identify 13 discrete, very clear things about the website. Do they offer 24/7 support? Do they offer chat support? Do they offer email support? And we can turn that into a scoring rubric, check a couple of data providers, check for the presence of team member, like certain, do they have these different titles? And all of a sudden it's okay, now we've actually replicated their qualification process, which took 2 hours a day, like 30 to 60 minutes to find one qualified account. And we just ran like 80% of their CRM through it. And we're now finding all the white space in their market and like running their entire market. And so I'm excited because I think that's going to unlock not just the SDR team, but that's going to unlock the marketing team too, which is like the marketing team, they have not been able to have a properly targeted account list like forever because it's basically dependent on the BDRs to qualify. And the AEs can't really hit their self-sourcing targets if they can't find qualified accounts. So we just help them redo their book rollout because we fixed some Clearbit and key play enrichment stuff. And we gave them a list of actually, okay, these companies actually have the right kind of support motion. So that's like a good example where it's like, the dumb way is I'm just going to automate everything all at once. Systems don't work like that. The smart way is, okay, let's think intelligently about the system. Clearly, we have a hypothesis that like the actual constraint in the whole system is just qualifying accounts. Let's think and figure out how are the best humans doing this in a detailed and manual way today. And we know it's working. Okay, now that we have that, now let's scale it. And the next step, and then we were able to pull some contacts too, but the next step is going to be like, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the metrics. We're talking with a SDR leader today, or not today, like we've talked in the last few weeks. And it's, okay, what's the next bottleneck? It's looking like it might be phone data. They're using a phone provider without good phone data. They have a 3 percentile to connect. We're able to hit 20 when we hit tight neck.
Nice.
So I'm going to be like, okay, I think our next step is let's look at doing phone, because if we add phone, that effectively doubles or triples. They have an overall, if you look at their outreach, right? They reached out to like 19,000 contacts in 2024. 6% of those contacts turned into a response. And then like 20% of those or so turned into a meeting. So it's one of those things like, okay, 6%, if I can add 10, I just unblocked a lot more contacts, but if I can take the same number of contacts and convert 10 or 20% more, that in theory should unbottleneck everything else. And so that's an example. To me, that's the heart of go-to-market architecture engineering, is you're being a lot more smart about it. And you're not trying to automate everything, because there's no perfect system. I've learned a lot about that from Joe Gilkey. It's what is the next right thing to unbottleneck? And if you just, it's because manufacturing actually dealt with this like 60 years ago. Manufacturing do this with lean process. And you've gotten a constraint was, okay, can I just, you found the real bottleneck in the system where it's like, if I just press this button, does everything downstream work better? And so if we can do that, anyway, we'll see. I'm a little bit of a tangent, right?
That's cool.
Interesting story.
No, it's good.
It illustrates, and I think, yeah, dude, I could go on a lot, but yeah, I think
it's good.
I think it illustrates like that's the smart way to do AI. Is you don't try to AI everything, because AI on its own is useless. You have to target it, you have to constrain it, you have to focus it, and you have to give it examples that it can mimic and scale.
Yeah, I want to walk through some of the things I've seen in some of your posts lately. So what I like about what you're doing is that you're using tools at people's disposal, whether they are AI based or not, and looking at it from ones of saying, okay, our goal is this account enrichment, like really understand the accounts we're going after. And so you employ Clay or Gong in conversations, like there's all these things you do. So walk me through what's the difference between a mediocre version of how that account is, and then what's the good version, and what are like the standard tools, or I shouldn't say tools, categories of tools that you work through to say, you need this and this to make sure you have these 5 things. Like what's your process like?
Rather than going into that, let me zoom out.
Yeah, please.
This is because the thing that's tough about this is your podcast video?
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? I'm just going to share screen and show you.
Ooh, let's do it. This is even spicier. I love it.
Yeah, so I'll just show you, like, this is exactly, I'm a standing guest. I'm a stand.
I know, I got to stand for podcast too. So
No, that's good. So let me just show you, like, this is how I think about the market funnel overall. The problem with this is that anything you don't fix upstream causes downstream problems. Let me give you the funniest example of this ever. Talking to this SDR team, high velocity, parallel dialer, 10,000 emails a month per SDR. They're booking 80 meetings a month. Guess how many of them are getting disqualified every month?
half.
60%.
Yeah.
And the reason they're being disqualified is not because the messaging specs, the messaging could be better. The reason they're getting disqualified is they didn't build a good account list. It was like an account planning process. It was an account planning product. And they did not take the time to figure out, okay, what account qualification criteria indicate someone has a strategic sales motion.
Yeah.
And so everything downstream of the account was toast.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, typically what happens is, examples of this is like, hey, we have a bunch of general SEO traffic. It turns out like a lot of your SEO traffic might actually be giving you SMB buyers when you want enterprise. And so you might be able to get a bunch of email replies for those people, but very few of those people are going to convert into sales opportunities. You might be running a bunch of ads. Very few of those people are qualified contacts. And so you either have to disqualify them or shunt them to self-serve motion, or you run them through a process, your SDRs reach out to them, and AEs just totally disqualify. And so this is a really common problem. This is why I'm so obsessive about this. I'm trying to be not quite as rigid about it, but so my methodology about is, so one of my friends, Kyle Williams, he looked at a major sales engagement platform's data. They came to him and said, they told him, hey, we want more B2B SaaS companies. And he came back and he said, okay, maybe. This was years ago. Kyle was kind of like the OG GTM engineer before everyone even knew that existed. He did that with companies like Stripe and Segment and Outreach, and like really smart guy. They did 50 interviews, and what they figured out after 50 interviews is that this sales engagement platform's ICP, it's not actually B2B SaaS companies. It's companies with an outbound sales team that has a sophisticated sales motion. In this particular case, it meant, hey, if there is a sales operations and a sales enablement person at a target account, they're twice as likely to close. Now, most RevOps teams at scale, they're doing territory building on industry and company size, and that's just wrong. Like, that is not what makes someone buy. Industry is a general proxy for the structure of the team and the kind of technology they use and the processes they use. This is why you need actual account qualification criteria, because what this effectively means is GetRev did a similar study. They found like people in this AI ICP with all these other, they call them exographics, they're 2 to 5 times as likely to close. Changing industries in 90% of company cases will never get you a 5x increase in close rate. Now, here's the flip side and the scary part. What this means is if you're targeting someone outside of this, you have a 50% to 80% lower close rate, which means 50 to 80% of your, like any revenue or sales activity you put into an unqualified account, it's 80% less effective. You could literally
wow.
you could literally make 100 calls into a qualified account and 100 calls into a less qualified account. One of those things is 5 times more effective at actually generating revenue. And it's got downstream implications too. It's not just
Totally.
close rate. It's actually, in a lot of cases, it's going to be it's going to be net revenue retention. It's going to be expansion. So this is something like, so anyway, I'm obsessing about that, but that's a good example. And so it's like a lot of times there's these problems like, oh, we're getting a lot of churn. Your targeting sucked. And you push the sales team to close at all costs. And half of those bad fit customers never actually got onboarded or started adopted the product. So then I'll just walk you through. So I'm obsessing about the accounts, but because that's, hey, if I can pull a lever and double my close rate, I want to pull that lever. Qualified contact. Go ahead.
I was just to say, since all kind of hinges on the qualified account, that's my question. You is now doing this and obsessing over this and like obviously very passionate about it. Besides industry and employee count, it feels like what you're basically saying is it's like a meta model. So where there's not, you don't have a list of things. So you have to have these 10 things. It's more saying it's more the concept. Then you find it might be the enablement RevOps existing in the same place. And that's the thing. It's like, you don't know what it is until you get into it, is what I'm saying. Is that correct?
You can come up with
Yeah.
hypotheses if you understand. If I have an ABM tool, I can have a hypothesis. It's like a good hypothesis is like I do some work on the ABM tool. Anyone without split testing on their website, demand gen, and marketing ops, probably not going to care nearly as much. So the way I do it is we have this thing we call a perfect opportunity worksheet. And basically we go to the best sales reps and we put a worksheet in front of them and say, okay, imagine you're researching the best prospect ever. You look at them on LinkedIn, you look at them on their website, you're looking at their team on SailDab. Like, what do you expect to see? What's on the website? Do they have a demo button? Do they have a support center? Do they mention a specific thing? Sometimes we throw this into an ML tool called Actio to see what trends we can pick up. What are the department headcounts trends? Do they have a lot of SDRs? Do they have not very many SDRs? Do they have a lot of DevOps engineers? Do they have not very many? Do they have a FinOps team? Do they have multiple cloud providers? Do they mention DEI on their hiring? Do they mention 401k contributions? Do they mention an earned wage access benefit? All of those things are definable qualification criteria. And if you lock that in up front, now I don't want to just obsess about that because in reality, like some companies have this already and you can just take existing qualified accounts and work them better. But that is a good example. And it's emblematic. If you're trying to use AI to write email, we were just talking about how pretty sure we generated 25 million in pipe for an enterprise LMS company. Way you do it exactly the same way as you do the qualified account. You figure out, okay, how would a BDR create a perfect manual email? You create a long list of prompt inputs to pull together a bunch of signals or use a platform like Revenoid or Evergrowth. And then you prompt engineer, then you pull in some product marketing collateral for the different personas. And then you prompt engineer until you can mimic the output of that email at scale. Right. And so it's the same principle. It's just in different places. How does the best AE research and prepare for a discovery meeting? We helped open an op at UPS, 300K plus, by giving this AI account point of views for a strategic AE that was taking a meeting with them. Use 5 of our talking points, schedule a follow-up workshop. 2 of the 3 agenda items of that in-person workshop are things we highlighted. So it's the same principle. And that project started with us interviewing him. So it's like, and I focus on the account because it dictates the effectiveness of a lot of the rest of your go-to-market, but it's the same principle. How are the best reps doing it manually? How does a pro do it manually? Tangent. But I think your audience will appreciate it. This is why the AI SDR companies, it's because they're designed by someone who doesn't know outbound.
Right.
This is why Lavender's AI SDR is actually going to be good because in my opinion, Will Allred is one of the top 10 people in the world at cold email. Right. So he actually knows. I've seen other companies' AI email products. And I was like, okay, I know that no one on your team knows cold email because I look at this and it's obvious, like this should have never left production. I don't get why you're showing this in public. This is embarrassing. And it's one of those things like the product manager doesn't even know enough about cold email to even know if they have the right inputs. And so that's the challenge you have to solve with AI is you have to get a real true subject matter expert to tell you, actually, this information is important. That's information is important. AI is
Yeah.
like this little tiny brain where you need to give it all the right inputs. And if you don't give it the right inputs, nothing happens. Or worse, you get a good local system. You prompt engineer and hack your way to a local solution, and you think you've solved it, and you scale it, and it doesn't work. You're like, what the hell just happened? You've never actually solved the problem because you never understood in the first place.
Yeah, I 3000% agree with that as far as AI. Like when I go into prompt engineering and stuff, and I have people who are specialists, like a lawyer or something, like I can hack my way to a prompt engineer, but I have to have that expert there to tell me and guide me on the output. Cause then when I do, I can kick ass at it. But if I'm just by myself trying to get a lawyer version of whatever, I can't do it because I'm not an expert. I don't know.
You don't even know the right questions to ask. That's the hard is you don't know the right questions to ask. And so if something's wrong, there are just a lot of little subtle details where it's like you and I, we hear an SDR on a cold call or someone on a discovery call, it's flopping. If we ask like our friends or spouses are not in tech, like what's going on, they might have some idea, but we're going to just be able to pick up things. It's this tacit contextual knowledge. The problem is AI is trained on the average person. And so it's like, you're going to get an average understanding of it unless you specifically prompt for that. And
they should pull it out.
People designing AI products don't have that like tacit knowledge. So they don't even know what they're missing.
So when you go through this kind of process, walk me, what are your posts? In fact, literally look at this real fast. Like it was on from, right? Oh, literally like from yesterday. We was talking about the standard playbook versus now what happens at 25. This is what we do better. And you pulled in specific tools, and you can mention the tools. And all the tools you mentioned, I love, but it's more about the concept that you're trying to get to. If the tools deliver an output. And as far as I know, you're using multiple tools because it's not one tool that help you with every single piece of this, right? So you have to kind of like puzzle this together.
And it's a moving target, right? Like I'll give an example. I love the Apollo team, but they didn't keep up with email deliverability changes. A year ago today, I was sending cold emails at scale in Apollo fine. You can't do that. I have not been able to do it work. At least I haven't been able to. Maybe there's some who can, but I've not been able to run a year and a half. I was running multi-inbox high volume inside of Apollo. I can't do that today. I actually don't really use email that much right now. It's much more phone first because you get a lot more information. But that's like a good example where it's like the target's constantly moving. And if people aren't, at the end of the day, I really focus on the team. Like one of the reasons, for instance, I love Titan is because Joey and Justin Middleton, they live and breathe the phone, and they're very smart and they're very hungry. And so you put something like Titan, like you have a product like that, and it's like, it's going to be good because they know enough about the phone to know if it's not good. If you have a product founder that doesn't actually understand the subject, it's going to miss the mark.
Totally. So what do you feel like people get, obviously, besides the accounts and doing the investigation? Because what I'm basically hearing is you doing a crap ton more investigative work to dive in. But
here's the thing that I don't want to do. I think there's two ways to do it. You start hiring a bunch of people. There's two dumb ways to do it. You start hiring a bunch of people, and this is the old school sales playbook. We just need better people and more of them. Yeah, but if you hire 10 SDRs and there's no proven playbook to do this, then that doesn't work either. And then there's the other dumb way to do it, I think, is something that RevOps people can sometimes be, and I'm guilty of this too, to a degree, where it's, I'm going to build a perfect system. I need to clean up my Salesforce. Salesforce is not dirty because Salesforce data is inherently bad. Salesforce is dirty because people are interacting with it and people are not consistent. So your Salesforce data is never going to be clean. I think the smart way to do it is, okay, there's no perfect system. What is the constraint, right? So like, for instance, for one works, like we used to do this whole waterfall process where we have to fix and control the entire customer journey. And we did that for a couple of orgs. We got them from 0 to 1 and they're outbound motion. We're scaling it up. But what I'm starting to do now is I'm like, look, man, like I can fix your account lists, but let's take a look at your SDRs. Hey, you guys have 10% response rate and you're not using the phone and your phone data sucks. What if we just took 1,000 contacts that we already know are good, and let's just run them through Titan and call them. And then I know that if I take 1,000 contacts through Titan I'm going to be able to reach 20% of it. I will. And so in that context, it just becomes much simpler. So I think the smart way is you're like, okay, what is the actual bottleneck right now? And how do we create the largest impact right now? And once people see impact at one area, they get excited about moving to the next funnel metric. So I think for me, the big, zooming out, because we're focused on this. I think the big opportunity, I think like the first thing every org should do this year is like you don't need the perfect account list, but if you have a pretty good account and contact list, that unlocks a lot of plays. Because if you do that, suddenly your SDRs and AEs have 2 to 4 hours a day back. And then the next thing you should do is, in my opinion, get better phone data and start actually calling, and get to the point where your AEs and SDRs are actually having 3 to 5 conversations per hour, and fix your messaging, right? If you don't have at least a 10% conversation and meeting rate, you have a messaging problem. You might have a targeting problem, but hopefully you fixed your targeting at least a basic level. Iterate on the messaging, and then you fix something with email. And obviously you also need account intelligence and research, but I don't think signals really help you if you if you don't have a good target account list, signals aren't going to save you. Signals just tell you who to focus on. And signals don't fix your messaging either, right? If you don't have a complete message framework, then you're not going to do that. But you're not going to get anything out of it. So for me, it's okay, unbottleneck the research part, make it so your team doesn't have to spend 2 hours a day researching. Get them an actually good dialer stack so they're talking to people, and then optimize the other channels, get emails that don't suck, get Lavender, get the team trained, get an email sequence that's actually producing at a 2-3% per email reply rate, improve this, make sure to follow up on it. It's, okay, now we have held meetings. Great. Now let's work on the held meetings. Let's come in with an actual point of view. You don't need anything fancy for the held meeting because there's fewer of them, but great. Let's come up with a chain of chat GPT prompts where I throw in the client's website and job title and stuff, and I get something actually interesting to stay afterwards. And I have a good discovery deck that leaves them thinking like, I hadn't considered that. And this is hard because you actually have to point of view on the market. But if you do all that, it's, okay. And there's multi-threading, business case building, a lot of stuff like that. But I think for a lot of orgs, the key constraint for most orgs that I know of, it's qualified pipeline. There's a lot of stuff you can do with sales opportunities, but for a lot of orgs, their overall key constraint, like this would be different if I was talking to a lot of orgs and they're like, yeah, we have a lot of meetings and we're not making a lot of revenue. In those cases, first thing I'd still do is fix the target account list. But that's different, right? So I think right now it's, hey, get a conversation engine, get a qualified conversation engine where you're having a lot of conversations with the right people at the right accounts. Use that to iterate towards effective messaging. And you can use AI to help with messaging as well. Like the secret is, here's what we do. What are the job responsibilities and metrics of this job title in this type of industry, in this kind of company size? Okay, that's what this person's probably thinking about. What frustrations does this person have that I can solve? What are the dream outcomes? What fireable outcomes can I help them prevent? Few problems. But I think that's the thing. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what's fascinating about this is I feel like I was in sales for years and years, and then I went to enablement, and in enablement, like this process I did, but for the sales process specifically. So my job was to figure out, was it the personality of the sales rep? Was it the product? Was it the pitch? Is the people? Like I did the same process, but super narrow into just the sales process. So seeing it I've now since being in go-to-market, I look at the larger view of it, but seeing this, and I hear the same thing about pipeline is the main problem. And a lot of times when people are talking about how to solve pipeline, it's more about, we just got to get more, which means we got to have more volume. And it's not about fine tuning the message or the people or any of that. It's just, let's just go or finding ways to get more.
Nuance on that is, it is to a degree about more. Like you can't strategically sell it's going to be a fucking grind. Like you're going to have to send a lot of emails and you're going to have to make a lot of calls. There is a ceiling to how high you can get your reply rates. You did actual research into teams, like, because I was really curious. Hey, is Lavender actually getting 20% reply rates? And I was like, okay, in practice, here's how you get like really high reply rates. You email people that are previous users of your product and have 8 signals. So you can't get 20 or 30% reply rates from everyone in your market.
Right.
Feasibly get 15, 10% reply rates. That's attainable. Maybe 20% over 1 year of follow-up. And so there's going to be a minimum level of volume you need. And so it's like, you can't just sell your way to greatness. Because a lot of what that strategic selling ends up being is you're just selecting better contacts and accounts. Like per email, like you can hit 3, maybe 4%. Call conversation. If you have tight X and a good dialer, you can reach with perfect data, you reach 20 to 30% of your market. With LinkedIn, you like 30, depending on your market, 10 to 60% of them are on LinkedIn. If they're not on LinkedIn, your invite to connect rate is going to be like 5%. So it's one of those things. Each channel has these hard caps. And so you have to do the math of sales. Okay, with a qualified account, what's our held meeting to opt, right? Okay, now what's our conversation to meeting? What's our email reply to meeting? What's our LinkedIn reply to meeting? LinkedIn is super hard to track, so I don't focus on that as much right now. But once you have this, what the conversation to meeting rate, great. So I just ran this math. The company told me they wanted to scale to 10 million ARR, right? And I was like, great, here's the math. You need 180 more customers at 50K. That means you're at a 25% close rate, which is a little high, but potentially it'll. Now you need 720 meetings. Optimistically, to cut your conversation, your meeting rate for 720, let's say 20%. That would take a year of follow-up or an extremely vague message. That means you need about 3,500 conversations. Let's be generous and say you're spending a bunch of money on data for Titan-X or something like that, or you're doing great follow-up for a year, you're going to have a 20% contact to conversation rate. Okay, great. You scale that. What that means is you're looking at, for your team to hit quota, you need 18,000 contacts. Maybe let's call it an even 20 to add some margin. 5 contacts per account. That means you need 4,000 qualified accounts. You need to find all those contacts. All those accounts need to be good. Every 10% that's wasted in this, it totally screws all the downstream metrics. But let's assume you can actually get those, a good enough number. Then now that funnel math works. I find those accounts, I work those contacts, I get this many conversations, I get this many meetings, and this many meetings turn into ops, and this many meetings turn into deals. That works. But there's kind of hard caps on it, right? Like for AI personalized email, for AI SDR email, you're getting like a 5% response rate, maybe 10 over a very long time horizon. If you email someone every month for a year, you're looking at a 12% reply rate for the entire year.
Right.
And so you need a minimum level of volume, but if the accounts and contacts aren't right, and then obviously you still have to hit your conversion benchmarks. We worked with an SDR, so I'm just stream of consciousness thing, but we had an SDR that we're training with our team. We got him a great data and dialer stack. We got him 20 connects last Friday. He had like a 46% connect to conversation rate because his openers suck. And then we fixed it and we coached him on it. And on Monday, he booked 2 meetings.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So this is the hard part, is there's a lot of details for each one of these funnel steps. There's 5 problems. You know those.
Totally. Yeah. But I mean, with the last few minutes we have, this is fascinating. This is why I want to talk to you, Scott. This is exactly what I wanted.
Thanks.
When someone's coming into this, because like this, the GTM engineering conversation on LinkedIn is pretty hot right now, but no one really understands what the crap it is. Or at least there's very few, I would say there's few people who actually know it like you do. So if someone's wanting to talk about this and say, okay, do we use AI this? Do we not? Part of me is asking the question of, okay, the metrics for each step, yeah, please.
Whatever it is, you should use AI for it. You have to use AI, but what you need to ask, what you should be focusing on instead is, what is the repeatable process that a human would do manually? Do we thoroughly understand it? That's what you should be asking, is what is the right process? What is a repeatable process that a human could actually do on this? And then if I'm seeing system constraints, like we have a low dial to connect. Oh, phone doesn't work for us. Well, you have crappy data. So you have crappy data and all of your numbers are marked spam risk. So yeah, of course, phone doesn't work for you. You have to get a manual process that works, understand the inputs to that manual process, and optimize those, and then use AI to scale a manual process that works, or other tech.
Yeah, I love that. My thought is like, and this is a request for you. I don't know if you've posted this and I missed it, but if I have, please tell me. But I'm thinking like, part of me, when you see these metrics, like saying like email reply rates or the connect rates or the meeting rates, whatever the case is, I think most companies are so solid, they know their own numbers. And I know that's what you're saying is focus on your numbers and then improve them. But do you find it helpful to know markets averages to know, okay, you're above the below where you're at?
100% essential. Absolutely essential.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know
Yeah,
that,
it's-
and the way I look at this, so it's kind of like industry averages, I think are actually not terribly helpful. Because industry averages, I think it's helpful to know, but industry averages, I think, hide the truth of what's going on. People used to think, oh, you have different connect rates by industry. Phone ready leads came along. It's actually, you don't have different connect rates. You have different data qualities and you have different propensity to pick up among the people with the phone numbers. And those are just, it's more of a function of data coverage and personality profile of different industries. So it's like, you need to know the industry metrics, but ideally a little bit beyond that as well.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I think first off, it's just knowing your own dang metrics. A lot of this stuff I can tell you from being involved in this kind of thing with both startups and Fortune 500s, not everyone has all these metrics. They have some of it, but there's either that or they don't have a centralized place where someone's looking at the entire machine. It's like very siloed of where they're at.
I think the hard part is the temptation becomes we always need more metrics.
Yeah.
And what you need to do is you need as few metrics as possible. And I think this is the right set of metrics, in my opinion. I've been able to use it to diagnose a lot of go-to-market engines. But, and you'll notice intentionally here, there's no activity metrics. Funny story, Aaron Ross never tracked dials. He just tracked conversations. Because if you set anything other than the conversation as the goal, you create the wrong incentives.
Exactly. Yep.
But yeah, so I think the thing is you need as few good metrics as possible. And then you need to track them religiously. And then you need to be thoughtful. And the other thing is you can't be a dashboard commando. You can't just look at email reply being low, assume you know what's going on. It's like you have to actually look at it. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to talk to people. You have to look at the system. You have to look at the emails. Like the metrics just tell you where to look. They don't tell you what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I feel about the whole sales process too. It's like when you see deals die in stage 3 of the process, you don't say, okay, cool, we got to fit. You got to go in and figure out why.
It might be a stage 2 or stage 1 problem or even a targeting problem.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Scott, this is fascinating, man. I could talk to you for a long time, but I'm gonna pause this because I know you're on time. But what's the best way to someone get in touch with you to get to know you more and talk to you if they want to?
As far as I know, I'm the only Scott Martinez, NIS.
Okay.
I've Googled many times. I don't think there are any other Scott Martinez's.
Random story. There is one other Jonathan Carford, but he's in Sweden and he's blonde and he's a skydiver. So he's definitely different than I am. But anyway, but seriously, thank you, man. I'll make sure I include your website and obviously your LinkedIn profile to this as well. But Scott, this is awesome. Love what you do, man.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Cool. Talk soon, man.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.